What happens when a rising Hollywood powerhouse, known for her quiet intensity and razor-sharp instincts, is pushed one step too far on live television? What happens when Jenna Ortega, calm, composed, meticulous, is suddenly cornered in a way she never expected, and the only escape is through fire? Because the moment you're about to relive is one the audience still can't stop talking about. It began on a Thursday morning, one of those episodes of The View that felt routine on the surface. The kind where the audience filters in with coffee cups and half-whispered conversations, expecting banter, laughter, maybe a light disagreement. But there was something different in the air backstage. The producers felt it, the handlers felt it, and Jenna Ortega felt it most of all. She stood just outside the curtain, hands folded, shoulders subtly tense in that way people get when they are preparing to defend something important. There was a seriousness in her eyes that didn't match the promotional nature of her visit. She had come to discuss her latest psychological drama film, a movie exploring trauma, generational guilt, and the razor edge between identity and expectation. Heavy themes, and she'd expected thoughtful conversation. But she didn't yet know Joy Behar was in one of her moods. One of those sharp, unfiltered, unpredictable moods where her words came quicker than her caution. The cameraman signaled. The stage manager lifted a hand. And the audience, unaware of the storm forming backstage, burst into applause as Jenna walked out, petite but powerful, her expression polite but focused. She waved lightly, taking her seat between Sunny and Sarah. Whoopi leaned in with her typical warmth. "Jenna, good morning. You're back, and everyone is excited." Jenna smiled, genuine but small. "Thank you for having me." But even before the interview fully began, Joy's eyes were on her, narrowed, curious, like she was preparing to poke at something she wasn't sure would break. "So Jenna," Joy said, leaning forward with that distinct half-smirk, "you've gotten a reputation lately. People say you're difficult, very opinionated, controlling of your productions." She paused, letting the words land harder than necessary. "Are you becoming a little too big for your boots?" The audience didn't laugh. In fact, a few people audibly exhaled. Whoopi turned her head slightly, a sign she already felt the temperature rising. Jenna didn't flinch. She blinked once, slow. "I don't think it's about being difficult," she said calmly. "It's about advocating for the character, the story, and making sure we don't fall into hollow or lazy writing." Joy cut in. "But actors don't write the scripts. Isn't that the job of writers? Why not just stick to acting?" There it was. The first match struck. The room tightened. The air felt electrified. Even the cameras seemed to tilt closer, hungry. Jenna inhaled, her voice still soft but now carrying a faint tremor of emotion. "When I'm working on a story that means something to me, I can't stay silent if something feels inauthentic. I'm not trying to take over. I'm trying to collaborate." Joy raised a brow. "That's not what some people say. You know, there were reports that you walked onto the set of Wednesday and rewrote scenes on your own. Isn't that a little?" She paused, letting her hand circle midair, overstepping. A few audience members murmured. The tension crawled up the walls. Sunny shifted in her seat, ready to intervene, but Jenna's jaw tightened just slightly, a sign she wanted to address it herself. "I didn't rewrite scenes on my own," Jenna said, her voice firmer now. "I had conversations. I shared concerns. And those changes were made with the team's agreement. I care about authenticity. If that's considered difficult, then maybe we need to rethink how we treat young women with opinions." The audience erupted, applause, cheers, a few loud "that's right" from the back. But Joy wasn't done. If anything, the reaction seemed to push her further. "Oh please," Joy laughed, waving a hand. "Every actor says they're just being collaborative. But you're what, 21, 22? Do you really think you always know better than the people who've been doing this for decades?" Something cracked, subtle but undeniable, in the air around Jenna. There was a flash in her eyes, a spark of something she had clearly been holding back for a long time. And the entire studio felt it. She leaned forward. "Experience doesn't automatically mean understanding," she said, her voice quiet but cutting through the room like a blade. "Sometimes the people closer to the character, the person actually performing it, see things differently. And maybe some people don't like being questioned because it makes them feel." She caught herself. For half a second. But only half. Joy crossed her arms. "Because it makes them feel what, Jenna?" The audience went dead silent. Sunny looked to Whoopi, who was frozen, waiting. Even Sarah shifted back in her seat, sensing the impending collision. Jenna exhaled, a long, controlled breath. Because it makes them feel uncomfortable, she finished. It forces them to rethink things. And not everyone likes rethinking things. Joy gave a thin smile. Well, sweetie, welcome to Hollywood. Sometimes you don't get to make all the decisions. Jenna stared at her. The kind of stare that wasn't hostile. It was worse. It was disappointed. It was tired. Sometimes, Jenna replied slowly, people underestimate you because they think you should just be grateful to be there. Especially young women. Especially young Latina women. The audience reacted instantly. Shocked gasps, murmurs, nervous applauses. Joy sat up straighter, suddenly rigid. Are you implying I said anything about you being Latina? I'm implying, Jenna interrupted softly, that when someone constantly reduces your contributions to ego or attitude, instead of expertise or passion, it says more about them than about you. That's when it happened. The shift. The snap. Joy leaned forward, red creeping into her cheeks. Now wait a minute. No, Jenna said, not loud but with a sharpness that cut through Joy's words. I came here to talk about my work. My film. My craft. Not to be scolded or belittled on national television for caring about the things I make. The studio audience gasped, loud, collective, stunned. Joy blinked, thrown off. She opened her mouth, closed it, searched for something, anything, that wouldn't sound like she was doubling down. Whoopi finally stepped in. Okay, let's just breathe for a second. But the energy was already spiraling. The tension had turned into a live wire stretching between Jenna and Joy, humming with the risk of another explosion. Jenna wasn't angry, not in the loud, erratic way people expected. Her voice was controlled, precise, but sharp enough to wound. Joy leaned back, trying to regain ground. Well, if you're so passionate, maybe you should become a director. Then you can control everything and won't have to argue with writers and producers. That was the wrong thing to say. Deeply wrong. Jenna didn't snap loudly. She snapped quietly. The kind of quiet that echoed louder than shouting. I plan to, she said, eyes locked onto Joy's. I plan to direct. I plan to produce. I plan to create stories that actually mean something. Stories that aren't built around safe formulas and outdated assumptions, but real human experiences. And I won't let anyone minimize what I bring to the table. Not on set. Not online. And not here. Her eyes flicked toward Joy just enough for the implication to land. The audience exploded again, applause mixed with gasps, shocked laughter, a few people even rising from their seats. Joy sat frozen, utterly thrown. And for the first time all morning, she didn't have a comeback. Whoopi exhaled into her microphone, the tension so thick it was almost visible. We're gonna take a break, she said quickly, tapping the table twice, her voice trying to soothe the wildfire spreading across the room. But the break didn't come soon enough. Because as the camera lights shifted and the applause sign flickered, Joy leaned closer, her voice low but caught by the hot mic. You know, she muttered, attitude like that is why people say what they say about you. Jenna's face changed, instantly, like all the restraint she'd been maintaining snapped in one clean break. She turned to Joy, eyes fierce, voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt she couldn't hide anymore. And comments like that, Jenna whispered, are why young actors stop trusting shows like this. The audience erupted, but this time in chaos. Gasps. Shouts. A few claps. A few shocked oh my goddess. And then the screen abruptly cut to commercial. But backstage. That's where the real explosion waited. The commercial break sign blinked red above the stage, but the tension hanging in the air didn't dim with the lights. If anything, the moment the cameras cut, everything sharpened. The audience sat frozen, half whispering, half staring at the table where Jenna and Joy remained locked in an invisible standoff. Producers rushed in, quiet but rapid, like firefighters entering a room full of leaking gas. One approached Jenna, another crouched beside Joy, and the rest hovered around Whoopi and Sunny, trying to gauge how close this had come to detonating into something uncontainable. Jenna didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her expression said everything, her breathing tight, her fingers interlaced so tightly they blanched white. She was holding herself together, but only barely. Joy, meanwhile, looked stunned to find herself shaken. Joy Behar didn't get rattled. Not by politicians. Not by celebrities. Not by anyone. But something about that last moment, the hot mic catching her, Jenna's quiet retaliation, felt like she'd been caught with a hand somewhere it shouldn't be. Okay, a producer whispered urgently to Joy. We need to ease the tension on the next segment. Keep it light, keep it calm. Joy waved him off. I'm fine, she muttered, but her voice wasn't convincing. Across the table, another producer crouched beside Jenna. You okay? Do you want to hydrate? Step backstage. Jenna shook her head, but her eyes flicked toward the curtain, as if imagining escape. Whoopi leaned in, voice low. Kid, you don't have to sit here if you don't want to. But it wasn't fear that held Jenna in place. It was resolve. Controlled, measured resolve. She didn't want to flee. She wanted composure. No, she finally whispered. I'm finishing what I came here to do. Sunny, watching her, gave a small, supportive nod. Sarah exhaled, looking as though she wished she could hug Jenna without it being weird on set. The break timer on the monitor ticked down. 30 seconds. 25. 20. The room shifted again. The host straightened. The producers stepped back. The audience braced themselves. But just before the cameras came back, Joy spoke, quiet, but edged. I didn't mean to offend you, but you overreacted. Jenna didn't look at her. Not right away. Her jaw moved slightly, tightening just enough to reveal she heard every word. When she finally turned, her voice was soft and steady. I reacted exactly as someone would when they've been spoken down to. Joy blinked. The breath she drew in wasn't steady. The stage manager's voice echoed. Back in 5, 4, 3, 2. The lights snapped back to life. The applause sign lit up, but this time the audience clapped with an uneasy, conflicted rhythm. Whoopi smiled tightly into the camera. Welcome back to The View. Before the break, things got lively. A ripple of awkward laughter floated through the audience. And we're gonna continue the conversation, Whoopi said, hands raised in her signature calming gesture, with respect. So let's take a breath. Jenna inhaled deeply. So did Joy. But the heat between them hadn't vanished. It had simply gone underground. Sunny picked up the thread. Jenna, your new film explores generational trauma, right? Tell us a bit about what drew you to that story. Jenna softened slightly, grateful for the pivot. The script deals with a family that's been avoiding their past for decades. I was drawn to the idea that silence can be just as damaging as action. Avoiding truth doesn't protect you, it traps you. The audience nodded, engaged. This was the Jenna they expected. Controlled, thoughtful, articulate. But Joy, still simmering, couldn't leave it alone. So is that why you're so outspoken about your roles? Because you're afraid of silence? Whoopi blinked in disbelief. Sunny shot Joy a look. The audience groaned audibly. But Jenna didn't flinch. Her voice remained calm, eerily calm. I'm outspoken because storytelling matters. Because representation matters. Because authenticity matters. Her gaze drifted toward Joy, the message unmistakable even without her saying more. Joy gave a tight smile. Well, I come from a generation where you respect the people running the show. You don't challenge them at every turn. And I come from a generation, Jenna replied softly, where we're taught to use our voice, even if it disrupts comfort. The moment hung in the air like static. Sarah jumped in quickly. Okay, well, speaking of voice, she forced a cheerful laugh. Your performance in the film's final act, oh my God, it's incredible. Jenna turned toward her, grateful. Thank you. That last scene was emotionally draining to film. I had to pull from very real places. Joy muttered under her breath, just loud enough for the MIC to capture it again. Maybe that's why you're so wound up. The room broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Dangerously. Jenna froze. Not in fear, but in revelation. She slowly turned back to Joy, and her voice felt suddenly heavier, like stones dropping into a pond. You keep saying things like that, Jenna murmured, and you wonder why people call out dismissive behavior. Joy straightened. I didn't say anything dismissive. You implied I'm emotional, dramatic, wound up. Well, and you said them in a way that suggests I'm irrational. Joy opened her mouth, but Jenna continued, unwavering. That's exactly the kind of language used to undermine young women when they advocate for themselves. The audience gasped. Sunny whispered under her breath, oh my. Joy scoffed. Oh, come on, that's a stretch. No, Jenna said, leaning forward slightly. It's not. A single audience member clapped loudly, then another. Then another. The applause built, steady, supportive. Joy stiffened. Well, excuse me for having an opinion. That's not an opinion, Jenna replied. That's a tactic. The audience exploded. Shouts, applause, gasps. Whoopi put her hands up. Ladies. But it was too late. The tension had been reinforced again. Joy's tone shifted, less mocking, more defensive. You know what? You're not the only person who works hard here. You're not the only person who's passionate. We're trying to have a conversation. Jenna didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her calmness was unnerving. I've been having a conversation, Jenna said. You've been making it personal. Joy's lips pressed into a line. You took it personal. You aimed it personal. The audience cheered again, louder now, more certain. Joy shook her head. You're putting words in my mouth. I'm responding to the words you said. Sunny stepped in carefully. Okay, why don't we? But Jenna wasn't finished. In every interview like this, she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly with the weight of what she'd been holding back, there comes a moment where someone decides the young actress needs to be cut down, needs to be humbled, needs to be reminded of her place. The studio fell deathly still. And I'm exhausted, Jenna whispered. Exhausted of pretending that's not happening. Joy stared at her, caught, exposed, and unprepared for a confrontation this raw. The audience sat forward, suspended between shock and awe. Whoopi finally intervened. We're going to take another break. But before the cameras cut, Jenna added one more sentence, quiet, heartbreaking, and devastatingly honest. I came here out of respect, she said. I didn't expect to have to defend my existence. A few audience members audibly gasped. Joy's face fell, not in anger this time, but in something closer to guilt, though still buried under pride. The commercial lights flashed. The producers darted in again, the atmosphere now boiling over. Voices overlapped backstage, urgent, stressed, frantic. Jenna stood abruptly. Sunny reached for her. Jenna. Jenna's voice cracked. I need air. She walked off stage, shoulders trembling, but her steps steady enough to show she hadn't been broken. She was simply overwhelmed. Joy sat frozen, staring at the table as though trying to process the fallout she hadn't intended but undeniably triggered. Whoopi rubbed her forehead. Jesus, that got too real. Sarah whispered, she's really upset. Sunny sighed. Wouldn't you be? Joy finally spoke, voice low. I didn't mean to hurt her. But whether she believed that, or needed to believe it, was impossible to tell. Backstage, Jenna pressed her hands to her eyes, swallowing back the storm rising inside her. She wasn't angry. She was hurt. And that was far worse. A producer approached gently. We don't have to continue. You don't have to go back out there. Jenna dropped her hands. Her expression was raw, vulnerable, but determined. No, she said softly. I'm not running. She straightened her shoulders. She was going back out. But she wasn't going back the same. And when she returned, the entire nation would witness the shift. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the commercial break continued, giving the illusion of calm while tension pulsed through every corner backstage. Crew members whispered urgently, gripping clipboards, glancing anxiously toward the hallway where Jenna Ortega had disappeared moments earlier. The entire building felt suspended, waiting for her next move. Joy remained at the table, staring ahead, jaw tight, eyes unfocused. Something unreadable flickered across her expression. Regret, confusion, pride, all tangled together. She didn't know how to fix what had unraveled. She didn't even know where it had gone wrong. All she knew was that Jenna's last words, I didn't expect to have to defend my existence, echoed in her chest in a way she hadn't anticipated. But before she could process that, before she could speak or gather her thoughts, the curtain rustled. Jenna stepped back into the light. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shaken. She was steady again, like someone who had taken a breath underwater and resurfaced with clarity rather than panic. Her shoulders were straight, her gaze fixed, her steps calm and controlled. The entire backstage froze as she walked past. A stagehand whispered, She's going back out there. A producer breathed, God help us, all right, everyone, get in positions. Jenna approached the table. Sunny gave her a soft, supportive smile. Sarah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire break. Whoopi looked relieved but wary, knowing the explosive undercurrent still simmered just beneath the surface. Joy didn't look up. Not yet. The stage manager counted down. Back in 5, 4, 3, 2. The cameras came alive. The audience applauded, though the sound carried a hesitant edge, as if they weren't sure whether clapping might ignite another eruption or diffuse one. Whoopi spoke first, her voice gentle but firm. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Jenna Ortega. Jenna nodded politely toward the audience, though her eyes flicked toward Joy for just a moment, calm, but undeniably cool. Whoopi continued, Jenna, you okay? A small, appreciative smile crossed Jenna's face. Thank you. Yes, I'm okay. I just needed a moment. The audience murmured with empathy. Joy finally lifted her eyes. There was something in them, something searching, uncertain. But she said nothing. Sunny leaned in. If you're willing, we'd love to continue talking about your film. There's a lot within it that clearly resonates with you. Yes, Jenna replied. It does. And I'm passionate about it. Her gaze drifted again, subtle, but unmistakable. And I think passion is often misunderstood. Joy felt that. Everyone did. But Jenna's tone wasn't an attack, it was a truth. Sunny nodded, picking up the thread. Your character carries a lot of emotional weight. Do you see yourself in her? Jenna hesitated, then spoke carefully, each word deliberate. She's someone who often feels unheard. Misread. Labeled in ways that don't reflect who she actually is. And that can get heavy. The audience was silent, utterly, profoundly silent. Joy shifted in her seat, her expression troubled. Sarah added gently, that's something a lot of people can relate to. Jenna offered a soft nod. I think so. Especially when you're trying to be honest about who you are and what you value. A beat passed. And then Joy spoke, quietly, almost reluctantly. Jenna. Every head turned toward her. Joy cleared her throat, her voice losing its usual comedic edge. When I said certain things earlier, I wasn't trying to diminish you. I was trying to, well, I don't know what I was trying to do. Maybe I went too far. Jenna met her eyes. There was no anger in hers anymore, just sadness mixed with guarded understanding. Thank you, Jenna said softly. That means something. Joy nodded once, quickly. I may not always say things the right way, but I'm not trying to put anybody down. Jenna tilted her head slightly. I believe that. But intention doesn't erase impact. The room hummed with a low wave of MMHM reactions from the audience. Joy swallowed. Fair enough. It wasn't an apology. Not fully. But it was the closest Joy Behar had come to one in years. And it shifted the atmosphere, not solving everything, but easing the pressure just enough to breathe again. Whoopi stepped in to smooth the transition. All right. Let's talk about this film before we start billing therapy sessions. Jenna, the themes in your movie run deep. Jenna nodded, relaxing slightly. They do. And the film doesn't try to give easy answers. Instead, it shows how conflict can reveal things we don't want to face. Another ripple of meaning passed between her and Joy. The conversation flowed more easily now, but it carried a fragile vulnerability. Everyone aware of the invisible bruise the show was still pressing around. Sunny shifted the energy with a thoughtful question. There's a pivotal scene where your character confronts someone older who keeps undermining her. It's extremely powerful. What did that moment mean to you? Jenna's answer came slowly, honestly. It meant telling the truth, even when it scares you. Even when the person you're confronting feels untouchable. Joy's breath hitched, just slightly. And it meant recognizing your worth, Jenna added, her voice soft but strong. Not shrinking. The audience erupted in applause, stronger this time, supportive, fully behind her. Jenna absorbed it with grace, not triumph. This wasn't a victory lap. It was catharsis. Joy waited for the applause to die before leaning slightly closer. You know, I may disagree with you sometimes, but I can't deny you've got guts. Jenna smiled faintly. Thank you. And talent, Joy added, unable to suppress a smirk. You've got that too. I saw the movie. The audience laughed, and Jenna flushed a little. That means a lot, Joy. Joy nodded. It should. I don't compliment people often. The audience laughed again. Whoopi exhaled dramatically. Thank God we're softening. I was about to meditate under this table. Laughter. Relieved, grateful laughter. The storm had passed, but not without leaving marks. As the conversation continued, something remarkable happened. Jenna opened up more, about the film, about creativity, about her identity in Hollywood. Her vulnerability wasn't cautious anymore. It was intentional, brave. And Joy, surprisingly, listened. Really listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't jab. She asked thoughtful questions, some even gentle. And every so often, her eyes drifted to Jenna with something that looked almost like respect. Near the end of the segment, Sarah turned to Jenna. You know, you handled everything today with a lot of grace. The audience applauded. Jenna shook her head lightly. I just tried to be honest, even when it was uncomfortable. Sunny added, that's strength. But Joy's voice cut in, soft, sincere, stripped of her usual comedic armor. It really is. Jenna turned toward her. They held each other's gaze for the first time since before the blow-up. Joy sighed, almost imperceptibly. You're young, but you're not naive. And you care. That's clear. Maybe I pushed harder than I should have. Jenna's jaw loosened. Her eyes flickered with something warm but cautious. I appreciate you saying that. Joy nodded, and this time the nod held weight, a real acknowledgement. The audience clapped again, but it wasn't loud. It was gentle, supportive, like a collective exhale. Whoopi leaned back in her seat, relieved. All right, folks. We're gonna wrap this up soon. But Jenna, before we go, what do you hope viewers take away from your new film? Jenna took a moment. Then she spoke with quiet emotion. That healing isn't linear. And that speaking your truth isn't disrespectful. It's necessary. She paused. And sometimes, the hardest people to be honest with are the ones sitting right across from you. The audience murmured, a mix of empathy and awe. Joy swallowed again. But this time, she didn't look uncomfortable. She looked moved. As the segment neared its final seconds, the camera focused on Jenna's face. Her expression was calm now. Refined. Strong. The fire hadn't gone out. It had simply steadied into a powerful glow. And no one watching, whether live in the studio or across the country, would forget what had just happened. Not today. Not for a long time. Because the real collision wasn't about ego. It was about understanding. And the world had just witnessed its first fragile steps. The moment the final segment wrapped, the applause washed over the studio like a tidal wave, relieved, breathless, and almost stunned by everything they had just witnessed. The cameras powered down. The bright studio lights softened, and a collective exhale rolled through the room. Jenna stood first. Joy remained seated for a second longer, staring down at her hands as if replaying every word, every moment, every choice. When she finally looked up, the studio was moving around them in a flurry of activity. Stagehands organizing, producers issuing instructions, makeup artists gathering supplies. But for a brief instant, it felt like only the two of them existed in the space between the table. Jenna hesitated. Just a fraction. But then she stepped forward. And Joy did something almost no one expected. Something the audience members who lingered long after filming would whisper about for days. She rose slowly and met Jenna halfway. Not with a joke. Not with bravado. But with sincerity. Listen, Joy said quietly, her voice rough around the edges. You challenged me today. And maybe I needed that. Jenna blinked, surprised, maybe even softened. I didn't mean to attack you. Joy shook her head quickly. No, you meant to stand up for yourself. And you did. The admission hung there, simple, honest, and heavy with meaning. Jenna exhaled, the tension she'd carried since the first spark of conflict finally beginning to fade. I don't like confrontation, she said quietly. People think I do, but I don't. I only get confrontational when I feel cornered. Joy gave a slow nod. I pushed you too hard. I see that. A producer approached, sensing the fragile piece forming. He touched Joy's shoulder gently. We need you backstage for notes. Joy waved him off without breaking eye contact with Jenna. I'm glad you didn't walk out, Joy murmured. I almost did, Jenna admitted. Joy swallowed. I know. For a moment, neither spoke. It was the rare kind of silence that wasn't awkward or hostile. It was healing, tentative, but real. Jenna extended her hand first. Joy looked at it, then at Jenna, then clasped it with an unexpected gentleness. Camera flashes suddenly went off, several producers capturing the moment for the show's official social media accounts. Jenna and Joy didn't break the handshake right away. The gesture lasted a heartbeat longer than strictly necessary, carrying the unspoken words both were too drained to say aloud. When they finally stepped apart, the studio buzzed with a different kind of electricity, hopeful, reflective, deeply moved. But outside the bubble of the show, the world had already exploded. Within minutes, the clip of Jenna calling out dismissive behavior had hit Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Fans edited slow-motion reactions, adding dramatic music, captions, rewinds. Commenters were divided, some defending Jenna fiercely, others supporting Joy, many shocked at the rawness of it all. By the time Jenna walked backstage, her name was trending at #2 nationwide. She passed a monitor mounted on the wall. On screen, a news ticker flashed. Breaking, tense exchange between Jenna Ortega and Joy Behar goes viral. Another headline scrolled beneath. Viewers stunned by raw emotion in live interview. And then another. I didn't expect to have to defend my existence. Clip hits 3M views in 20 minutes. Jenna stopped walking. She stared at the headlines, her throat tightening, not because she regretted anything she said, but because she'd been here before. Hollywood had a way of twisting authenticity into spectacle. Sunny approached quietly from behind her. You said what needed to be said. Jenna sighed. I didn't want it to blow up. Sunny gave her a kind, knowing smile. You can't control which truths the world decides to amplify. Jenna let out a breath. I don't want this to overshadow the film. Sunny placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It won't. If anything, it'll make people listen. Back at the stage table, Joy remained still, letting everything sink in. She could hear audience members talking as they filed out. She really handled herself well. Joy went too far. No, Joy just pushed like she always does. They both made good points. She's so young but so composed. Joy closed her eyes briefly. Every comment stung, even the neutral ones. But she knew, deep down, that she had crossed an invisible line today. She hadn't meant to. She didn't enjoy hurting people. But her sharp humor, her lifelong instinct to challenge, had collided with someone far more emotionally attuned. Her phone buzzed. A message from a close friend. You okay? That was intense. Another. Jenna made you look bad today. Another. You two should talk off camera. Joy typed slowly. We did. Then she set the phone down and rubbed her forehead. She wasn't used to being the one questioned. She wasn't used to being wrong. But maybe this was her chance to grow. Meanwhile, in a dressing room down the hall, Jenna sat on a couch, legs pulled slightly under her, scrolling through her phone. Her notifications were a wildfire. Clips of her emotional honesty. Clips of Joy's jabs. Clips of her controlled, measured responses. Memes. Supportive comments. Angry ones. Shock. Praise. Debate. It was everywhere. Saya knocked softly on the door frame. Hey. Jenna looked up, managing a small smile. Hey. Saya stepped inside cautiously. You okay? Jenna hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I think so. You were incredible out there, Sarah said earnestly. Not dramatic. Not over the top. Just truthful. Jenna exhaled, leaning back. I didn't want to fight. I know, Sarah said gently. But sometimes confrontation isn't a fight. Sometimes it's a mirror. Jenna considered that. She didn't like what she saw. Maybe not. Sarah shrugged. But maybe she needed to see it. A slow knock came at the door. Jenna froze. Saya stepped back as Joy Behar herself appeared in the doorway, hands tucked into her pockets, expression unguarded and solemn in a way she rarely allowed herself to appear. Can I come in? Joy asked carefully. Jenna nodded. Yeah. Joy stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The room shrank to silence. I wanted to tell you, Joy began, voice low and sincere, that I meant what I said earlier. You challenged me, and I don't take that lightly. Jenna swallowed. I didn't want to embarrass you. You didn't, Joy said quickly. You held your ground, and I respect that. Jenna looked down at her hands. Sometimes it feels like people think being young means being small. Joy sat beside her, not too close, not too far. I've been doing this a long time, she said. And sometimes I forget there are different ways of being strong. The words landed like a soft weight. Jenna nodded slowly. I wasn't trying to attack you. I know, Joy said. And I wasn't trying to belittle you. I just spoke without thinking. I noticed, Jenna said, a tiny smile tugging the corner of her mouth. Joy laughed softly. Yeah, I tend to do that. Silence settled again, this time warm, gentle. Finally, Joy added, I'm glad we talked. Me too, Jenna said. A long breath. A quiet reconciliation. A fragile but genuine understanding. And outside that dressing room, the world kept spinning. Social media kept raging. Clips kept circulating. Commentators kept dissecting every second of the interaction. Some praised Jenna. Some defended Joy. Some insisted both had valid points. But none of that mattered in this moment. Because the two women at the center of the storm had found their peace. Later, as Jenna walked toward the exit, dozens of studio staff waved goodbye, offering words of support. Some clapped. Some whispered encouragement. Some simply smiled warmly. Joy watched from across the room as Jenna prepared to leave. Jenna raised a hand in a small wave. Joy returned it. And for the first time that day, the two shared a genuine smile, free of tension, free of conflict, free of everything but human connection. Outside the building, fans and reporters had already gathered, flashes going off as Jenna stepped into the cool afternoon air. Microphones pointed toward her, voices overlapping. Jenna, do you have a comment about what happened? Are you and Joy okay now? Do you regret anything you said? Jenna paused. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't flustered. She was centered. I think, she said gently, that honest conversations matter, even when they're uncomfortable. The crowd fell quiet. And I hope today reminds people that speaking up, she added, isn't disrespect, it's growth. Then she got into the car, the door shutting softly behind her. And as she drove away, still trending, still the center of media attention, something settled in her chest. Not triumph, not victory, relief, resolution, truth. Because today wasn't about winning. It was about being heard. And she had been. Completely. If you've been following this story, if you felt the tension, the emotion, the honesty, then don't just watch from the sidelines. What do you think? Was Jenna right to call out the behavior? Did Joy go too far? Or was this simply a powerful moment of two strong personalities colliding? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your take. And if you want more intense, emotional, cinematic breakdowns of the biggest talk show clashes and celebrity confrontations, make sure you hit that subscribe button to talk narrative. There are so many more stories coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single one.